Why can't a woman be more like a man? Hmm? Yes.
Judge Lewitton, who was the chairperson of the Child Care Committee when it was first set up, and that committee pushed for and obtained a number of amendments to the bar rules back then. And one of the very important things was establishing a rental subsidy, I believe, for those with the primary care of children. And without that subsidy, of course, many women would have found it very difficult to retain chambers and spend time at home in the months following the birth of a child. Now, clearly that was something that you saw as a very important thing. And how well has it worked, do you think, since you allowed this exception?
I think it's changed certainly the capacity of women to stay at the bar when they've got young children. The rules are no longer as restrictive, and financially, before it was impossible. When I had children, I retained my room. I was out of work for 6 months for the first child and 4 months for the second child, and I paid rent during that time so that I could maintain my room. But you know, I had been at the bar for some time and I could afford to do that, but not everyone could, and people were leaving, so that and they had to resign. They had to resign from the bar, so that it was very important.
Really, it improves the bar and improves a lot for men as well as women, which is also the thing that bites is, for example, organising parental leave for chambers, so that you know, women and male barristers who have kids can get a subsidy of their rent. And so that means that, you know, fathers as well can spend more time with their kids. And that was something that was fought for by the Women Barristers Association.
But that was so bizarre. That was me. Except it was a really weird fight, because it just struck me as common sense. I mean, I was actually offended that I was been at the bar for 10 years, and here I was, and I was in this great set of chambers, and here I was with the choice of either paying the full amount of my chambers to keep them and stay in the great place where I was, or else leaving and having some Joe Blow take my room. You know, it was like, this is silly. I've built up my practice, and part of it is I have chambers with a particular group of people. So how come I risk losing that? And it wasn't even that it was just struck me as common sense.
But I've benefited from that policy so much over the years.
And so have the men too. A number of men have
Yes.
been taking paternity leave.
Exactly.
And I've had a lot of younger women tell me that it's one of the major factors that made them stay on at the bar at what can be a tricky time, where financially things are going down, emotionally, physically, everything's changing. There's not only that financial support, but there's the sense that the bar wants to encourage you to stay, and I don't think you can undercut how much that can matter as well.
And there's also the flexibility, the ability that you know that you can come back when you want to come back, and that a room will be there for you so that you can dictate the terms, because you don't know when you're pregnant how long you will need or how much time.
But you know, Rachel, the argument you made at the time was that the bar had, not long before, had a special policy in relation to getting young people to come to the bar, and so they had a rental subsidy system for that. And so that was really, once that argument was made about this, that was really the end of the argument, and that's how it got through bar council.
And the other thing that should be mentioned is it's limited to 6 months, so it's not some open-ended thing that's eating. And the other argument that I recall we put was, well, if you keep the barristers here, you'll get a lot more rent out of them in the future. You're only talking about a limited rent for 6 months.
When I fell pregnant, I was very scared to tell people, to tell instructors, and I kept it quiet until Mother Nature made it quite obvious. I had to confess up. So I remember, to my great disappointment, some barristers actually telling me, I remember one barrister in particular telling me, I thought a male friend telling me, I guess your career won't be so important to you now. And I was just stunned, and I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, you know, you won't be able to, you know, work the way you work now that you have a child. And I persisted. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, at a drop of the hat, I had to go to New South Wales to do a brief. I imagine you can't do that. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, haven't you heard abandoning a child's a crime? And I said, I'm serious. He actually said this to me. And I was stunned.
He lived on afterwards, did he, Michelle?
I was really quite disgusted. I said, well, you know, I didn't get pregnant by myself, and what's more, you know, there are support services, and I continue to work. I've got a brief that I continue to do. I'm doing an advice with a silk, and I work from home, so I've got the subsidised chambers which I come in, but she's a little bit too small for that, so I have my laptop. in front of me, and I have her next to me on the bed, gurgling away, if I'm lucky, and I work that way. So there are a lot of people, including, for example, the silk. When I told him, I thought he was going to. Well, I was a bit nervous. I thought maybe he might pull the brief or say, "Oh, that's going to be difficult for you to do." But he was lovely. He said to me, "Well, you better get cracking before she starts crying." Was lovely. But then there have been other people who seem to have assumed that now I'm really not going to be so career focused, that, you know, I'm just going to perhaps do a little bit, you know, just to keep my hand in.
A bit of dabbling.
Yeah, a bit of dabbling, work for a bit of pin money. But, you know, I'm not going to be a serious barrister anymore.
But I'm frustrated that, given that there's now a pretty significant group of senior women, that you're still encountering that attitude, Michelle. That's a real bother. That's something we need to take on.
Yes, it's
I don't know
true.
actually how you actually change that attitude, but it's just bizarre.
One of the fortunate coincidences I was thinking for the WBA is technology has come along pretty much along with the WBA's inception in 1993. So it does give you some flexibility, doesn't it, with regard to being able to be productive from the work point of view, but also to be flexible? Or have you not necessarily found this to be the case?
I think for me, doing advice work and that sort of thing has just been fantastic. You can communicate by email. I've got the phone. I've got broadband internet connection, so I can sort of surf the web and go download cases. And now instructors will also, email you briefs. I've also had instructors who can, scan, email you documents. So it's fantastic. And also I think particularly instructors now are more comfortable with that sort of flexibility, that I think a lot of them don't get so freaked out about the idea of actually sending you stuff that way or a time or that sort of thing.
Actually, that's a really good point, actually, that notion, because what I was talking about before, that idea that barristers have to be either in chambers or in court. You sort of, like a fly in amber, one or the other. And technology itself has made that less of an imperative in any event. So that sort of actually probably really helped the cause, I think.